Welcome back to AWS On Air. We are live here in Las Vegas, Nevada at AWS reInvent 2023. And yes, this year we're in the expo hall, so you can see all of the attendees behind us learning more about the cloud in efforts to democratize the cloud. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I want to start this off. This is my segment, and a lot of people ask me, Jeff, what's your favorite thing about working at AWS? And one of the biggest reasons I love this job is I get to talk to really smart people and really influential people, and that's what this segment is. I'd like to introduce my guest, Tom Soderstrom, who is an Enterprise Strategist with AWS. Tom, will you please introduce yourself?
Sure, and I'm still looking for those smart people. Where are they? My name is...
It's you.
Sorry. My name is Tom Soderstrom, and I'm an enterprise strategist at AWS. And that means we talk to executives one-on-one and in groups to try to understand what they are interested in. And we've all been executives have gone through the transformation of innovation, so we know the blockers and all that. It's not really just all about technology, and that's part of the magic, I think. But I love it. I love being here. I love all this energy.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Well, and this year, if the viewers have seen me and AM talk, we always talk about GenAI, Jenny, we like to call her, and that was kind of the big thing this year. And I wanted this segment to talk about what's next. What are we looking for beyond generative AI? What's out there to surprise us? And I figured Enterprise Strategist would be the perfect person to help us talk through that. And so, Tom, one of your quotes is that now that you work with AWS, your head's in the cloud, but your heart's still in space. Can you explain that for our viewers real quick?
Sure. So I grew up in space. Well, actually not in space, but I worked in space for Jet Propulsion Laboratory at NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory. I was the Chief Technology and Innovation Officer. So I got to drive a lot of innovation, and it was fun. It was really exciting. You had to look into the future, come up with the next IT decade, which is how long?
7 years?
3 years.
3 years.
And it's faster now. So the idea is, here's the global trends, and if you build it, they will come, is the idea. And then you can experiment underneath those. So that's what we did, and we were very successful. Cloud was something that came up in 2008. And I asked somebody, are we doing it? Oh, yeah, we're doing cloud. I said, great. Yeah, we fly our airplanes through the cloud, and we count the droplets. So, but fast forward, now cloud is part of everything.
I'm surprised you said you didn't get the answer. Oh, we have a team that studies clouds and what they're made up of and how they're changing and everything. Like, no, that's what we're talking about. So we named this segment how you can see through doors and around corners. So as we're looking into tech futures, we're looking at seeing through doors and around corners. Why did we come up with that? What's your thinking there?
It's really an Amazonian thing, seeing around corners. And seeing through doors. And in fact, we can, of course, but you have to predict what's coming, and it's frightening and fun at the same time, because we're not looking that far ahead, so we'll be there when we're wrong. But it's really, so we're going to talk about where is it going. And of course, with all of this excitement and all the things happening, that's a precursor, but where will it take us?
So can you give us some examples of kind of some of the doors you've seen through previously?
Sure. So it's about seeing around corners and seeing through doors of the things that are relevant to you. So when we came up with these trends, it was really about, in the end, it's democratization of innovation. So you get everybody's opinion, and you then double down on the things that are interesting and important. And for instance, we looked at the industry trends became cloud computing. And cloud computing was, of course, in how we did things and saved a lot of money on IT, but moved much faster. And then it led to cloud is now extended into space. So, selfishly look at how these things can benefit you as an organization or as a developer.
Yeah, and I always, I'm interested in Internet of Things, IoT, and I hear you talk a lot about Internet of Space things, but you actually take it a step further and say Internet of, and then you have brackets, enter something here.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be the Internet of anything, basically.
Yeah, it is. And I think what you'll see is, I always, as an engineer and a scientist and a programmer, I say, ride the hype. Don't fight it. It's a good thing. It's PR. So in this case, we hear a lot about generative AI, and we'll talk about that. It's a great thing. Internet of Things is arguably underhyped.
Yeah, Yes, yes, absolutely.
Because it's going to become specialized in Internet of Medical Things, and we're already seeing it, Internet of Wearable Things, and Internet of Space Things.
It is. I told my wife, who was having a hard time believing that Internet of Things is an actual thing, but it is the most influential, popular thing that no one really knows about.
Yeah.
I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about where it's going. And the summary is, we're going to talk about generative AI, of course. I talked to lots of executives. I've talked to 80 executives in the last 6 months. Hello, my name is Tom Soderstrom. Okay, what do you know about generative AI? I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But when you take AI and you put it on these devices spread everywhere, and they're small, the AI is small enough to run on it, and you have rechargeable batteries, so you get this infinite machine, you're really onto something amazing.
Yeah. All right. So beyond generative AI, now let's actually look around some corners, through some doors. Put your augmented reality goggles on. What are you telling executives now? What's next after Gen AI? I think you've hinted at some of them, but what are you telling folks? What do you see?
So just a retrospective a little bit. So we looked, and all of these things, it's experimenting, right? We looked at, you mentioned augmented reality.
Yeah.
So that was one of those trends. So we looked at augmented reality. I bought 10 Google Glasses. We tried them, found that it was really useful, worked with Google. They stopped using it. But those use cases that we found were super valuable.
Yep.
So when Microsoft HoloLens came out, we used that, and we were able to then implement those things, including looking at rocks on the Mars, and what could be more exciting than a rock? Because it could have a water streak through it.
Yes.
And driving rovers using augmented reality and virtual reality, making spacecraft. Actually, you can see your hand fitting through. So it's not a toy. It's much more than that. It's how you do work. So that's what it can lead to when you start experimenting with these technologies. Serverless is arguably one of the biggest things. Event-driven architecture, event-driven things. That's how you can do everything at scale.
Yeah, and serverless kind of plays a role in many different types of areas. So like serverless Gen AI, serverless
everything.
Yes, serverless.
That's where it's going.
Yeah.
So when you experiment with these things, people always ask me sheepishly, did I make any mistakes?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But it's worth it. I remember one time at JPL, we were doing an open source rover, the JPL open source rover, and it's being built, so build it. And the demo failed miserably. We used Alexa on it, and it said, hello, great. Okay, follow me, and it did dead as a doorknob. It turned out to be Wi-Fi. What else? What's the problem? And one of the high-level guys at JPL came in and told me afterwards, came down. I said, okay, now I'm going to get it handed to me. He said, great demo. You're daring mighty things.
Yeah.
And that's what this is all about. Because later on we figured out, and we came to reInvent, it was the star of Sunday Night Madness, and it worked perfectly. But had it not failed like that, so failure it's an experiment, and it should be celebrated.
Yeah, and I also think as we talk about democratizing IT, those failures are less expensive.
Yeah, exactly. So you asked, where is it going? One of the big ones, when we tie it all together, today we think about cloud, and we think about data centers and availability zones, regions. Tomorrow we're going to think about that, but all of those devices at the edge that will be running machine learning, that will be doing whatever they're good for, cameras looking at scary people at airports perhaps, sensors on oil fields, predictive maintenance on trains, trucks, etc.
Yeah, and
so cloud continuum is one of the big trends.
Especially agriculture. What's funny is
huge.
Farmers tend to be some of the most technology advanced individuals that I've seen. And they have to be.
Yeah.
To get the best yields. And our lives depend on that.
They do.
So, yeah. And that brings me to kind of concentrating on the problem versus seeming like, oh, let's make HoloLens or smart glasses. That sounds cool, but what problem is that solving? And you kind of went there a little bit, that you guys thought of some problems that can solve, but concentrating on the problem and food and agriculture and climate change, those are problems that seem to be driving some new technology trends.
I think sustainability, or ESG, is our biggest trend. We have a burning planet. We need to help it. And that's where my heart is in space, because all of the satellite data will help us.
Yes.
So now you take the satellite data and you use massive machine learning, you use generative AI, perhaps Amazon's Q, as that was just announced,
Yep.
and you can get a whole picture. And you can now detect fire in minutes, like the company XE can do in Australia, and alert early first responders, which could be drones, to
Yep.
put out the fire. Now, when you move that into space, you can do it in seconds.
Yep.
And so, very exciting future. And the big technologies here is, one of the big ones is to think at scale, and then just ask the data, have a conversation with the data. And I think that's why Amazon Q is so exciting.
Yeah. Well, and that brings back democratizing the data. That company in Australia 20 years ago might not have been able to have satellite imagery. Now there's an avenue for that.
Exactly.
And that is allowing something we were talking earlier about, like a lot of data by default, companies think this has to be proprietary, but nowadays I think there is a real choice. Is it more valuable to open it up for other people to use, to sample, I guess you would say, if you're a musician or whatnot? I think there are decisions that can be made where that is more valuable than being proprietary.
And I think as an overall model, if you can use open source for the code, assuming you can do that, and then run the operational in the cloud, whatever the cloud is, what version of the cloud, whether it's GovCloud or a more sensitive cloud or just a commercial cloud, then you have the perfect mix.
Yes.
You can get everybody to help you edit. If you can't, just decide what is it that's proprietary and important and what's not, and you can move much faster.
So yeah, sharing of data. The one thing I wanted to ask you specifically is quantum computing. Now, 5-ish years ago, it was kind of the big deal. I'm sure it is still a big deal. We don't hear about it as much anymore. So I wanted to ask you why we don't hear about quantum as much anymore. Because we all went through that phase. We all learned what qubits are. We all learned about the different states of those bits and how that kind of works. But we also learned how tough it is, quantum computing. So what has happened with quantum computing, and is that a trend down the road?
So there are some sleepers that will awaken, and those were put to sleep because all we want to talk about is generative AI, which is great. But those sleepers will awaken. One of them is quantum computing and quantum networking, but it will be applied on the right use case, difficult to solve chemistry, etc. Other sleepers are metaverse. It's coming back. The blockchain will come out of hibernation. And experimenting with emerging tech gets easier, and that's where AWS helps a lot.
What happened with blockchain? Because I understand, I'm not a blockchain expert, but I understand how it works. And it seems like those trusted contracts, blockchain contracts, make a lot of sense.
They make sense, and they will come back. I think it got tarnished by the NFTs.
Gotcha.
And the cryptocurrency. But blockchain is bigger than that. It's really about eliminating the middleman, which saves time and money. And I think digital twins, that's something to focus on. If you're a developer out there, a digital twin is an exact copy of the physical systems. And now you can experiment on the digital twin.
Get real-time data from a physical entity to help you make business decisions.
And help you experiment and use reinforcement learning to really figure out what it needs to do, all the millions of problems, and then deploy. Huge change.
Yeah, I would love if 2024 was the year of digital twins.
I think it will be. I even heard of a digital twin of Earth, an Earth cube.
Oh.
That's pretty big.
Well, because generative AI can help with, like, say, operational digital twins. You know, you have a big factory floor and one piece of equipment goes bad, and you can say, how do I fix this?
Exactly.
And that model can pull documentation from 5 different places and give you a summarized thing how to go and fix this thing.
Or pull data from all the places. The one thing we need to fix is our burning planet. Sustainability. And that's where digital twins can really help. Really, really help. So hopefully you'll help us save the world here.
So we're nearing end of the segment. Tom, thank you so much for being here. What would you say for all of our Twitch viewers, everyone viewing live, who wants to know what's next? What's next about GenAI? What's your biggest message for those viewers?
The biggest message is, with generative AI, now the user interface changes to be, the new programming language is English. Everybody becomes a programmer or a developer, and if you don't like it, edit it. Anything from the programs to the genes with CRISPR to 4D printing, it's a wonderful time to experiment.
Oh, we could have talked for a whole hour about CRISPR.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. I would have loved to talk about CRISPR. Yeah.
But so experiment, think of the 2 pizza teams, and just pivot and set everything up to, always learn something from the experiment. And then finally, it's not what you know, it's what you do with what you know and who you know. So network, meet with lots of people, wherever you are.
Everyone here wants to network.
Play on open source, and you don't have to start from scratch.
And it was part of my goal to have you network with all of our viewers, to have you on the show. So the one important thing I want to say is the problems. Fall in love with the problem. Is that the saying?
Yep. Don't fall in love with the solution, because it will change. Fall in love with the problem and keep iterating until you solve it, and then iterate some more.
And I think that plays well with sustainability.
Yes.
We love our planet. Fall in love with figuring out how to save our planet.
Exactly.
And the tech will come.
Yeah.
So, Tom,
thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Everyone, we'll be right back after this quick break live in Las Vegas at reInvent 2023.